Good day and welcome to this Island Stats interview with Dara Alizadeh. Did I say that right?
You did, yes. Well done.
Well, you have the ambitions of representing Bermuda at the 2021/2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo in the sport of rowing. It's a very interesting time for you and the sport, just like everything else. The pandemic has kind of put a halt to a lot of things, but getting back to Cambridge to get back into some form of racing or training, that's the first priority, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Obviously the last 6 months or so have been challenging, to say the least, with everything, coming, just kind of crashing around us. It's been a lot of improvising in terms of training, trying to figure out what we have access to and stuff, just because, a lot of gyms are closed, rowing clubs were closed where I was. But I think like a lot of the athletes that I know and I train with, and that I've known throughout in rowing, a lot of them found a way, and so you find what you can and you make it work. So then heading back to the UK, Cambridge will be a nice reforming of structure in a way.
Now, you were attempting to qualify for the Olympics that would have been taking place this year. Would have just recently concluded, but the shutdown came a mere 3 weeks before you were supposed to do that qualifier in Brazil?
Yeah, so basically I had spent the winter in Sydney, Australia, simply because Southern Hemisphere, the lakes and rivers don't freeze, and it was the summer there. So, and I had just gotten back beginning of March, and I had about 3 weeks to go until the qualifier down in Rio de Janeiro. And it was around that time when everything really started to ramp up, and people were saying, it was starting, obviously the pandemic was starting to really pick up steam. And I watched as the other regional qualifiers around the world began to get canceled. So first the Asian qualifier was canceled. The African qualifier had already happened. The European qualifier, I think, adjustments and adaptations were being made. And the Americas qualifier was just hanging on by, its fingernails, basically. And about 2 weeks before, so I think it was like March 13th or so, we got the email saying that, we can't go on, we can't proceed in a few weeks. So initially it was that, we're going to make some adjustments and not improvise, but we're going to make an adaptation to how to qualify. And it was supposed to be that we would be, the qualification would happen later in the year, when they would basically just combine all the qualifiers together. And then I think then people realized that this is not going to go away, and this is not just like a month thing and then we're going to be good. At which point then, of course, the Olympics then folded. And so it was a lot of lead up, and it was only a couple of weeks before that the plug got pulled. And so, and that was sort of the limbo period there of, what do we do now?
Where were you fitness-wise when all of that took place? Because you were preparing for the games, and obviously the qualifier, you got to be in the top 2 at the end of it in order to qualify for the Olympics for the region. So where were you fitness-wise at that time?
So unfortunately, I was really quite fit. Small correction. So at the regional qualifier, it's top 5.
5, right?
At the final qualification regatta for like the very last chance, that's where it's 2. And so, but the competition is very, very strong in the Americas. And so, So I was really fit. I had a really good productive winter, and had slashed a lot of time off my 2K time on the water. 2K being the distance race at the Olympic level. And I was feeling really. I made a lot of progress. I was confident. I was feeling fit. Yeah, like my skills were developed, and I was, them. So yeah, that kind of added to the disappointment. If I hadn't been, I think I would have been like, deep down, like, oh, thank gosh, it's been delayed. But I was really ready to have a crack at it, and so yeah, that added to the disappointment, I think.
When you look at the background of trying to qualify for the Olympics, and the fact that you've been taking part in a sport that you've predominantly done with a team, mm-hmm. How does the level of training change to adjust to go from a rowing team to a single? Because there are plenty of adjustments, aren't there?
There are, yeah. So I would say the biggest adjustment for me was it's changing disciplines a bit. So now what I mean by that is, in the team rowing that I was part of. So I would be rowing in my undergraduate days, and at Cambridge, I've been always rowing 8-man boats. So these are big boats, huge teams. But they're also what's called sweep rowing. So sweep rowing means when you have one oar and it goes out to one side, and you've got equal number of the right side oars and the left side oars in your boat. And oh yeah, that's a nice picture. And so I had always predominantly done that one oar style of rowing. Whereas in the so that's called sweep rowing, and it was making the transition from sweep rowing to sculling, which is you've got 2 oars. Now you can be part of a 4-man boat down to by yourself. And it was that transition, I think, was probably the biggest thing, because that's a purely and predominantly technical and physical change and challenge. I think I mentally was quite up for it. I was thinking, right, okay, there's a lot of overlap between the training and the and the rowing, and there's a good amount of overlap. It's that last little 30% that's physically the challenge. Right. But mentally, I was like, okay, I can handle this. I can learn this. So, I'm confident in my ability. Mentally, I think the challenge came in the dynamics of training, because again, like you mentioned, I was part of a team. I had teammates. Socially, it was very good for me. You know what I mean? That's the nice thing about being part of a team, is that you have friends who are all kind of striving for this one goal. And then all of a sudden, I'm by myself. Like, it is the single is, you are the lone wolf. You are there is no one in the arena but you, basically. And that, to me, I actually somewhat enjoyed. I think I'm fairly introverted, and I said, right, I can kind of crack on. I make my own schedule. I can really change things to fit around me and do what's best for me. But I quickly realized that the when you really got to push yourself, and not having teammates there, not having people you can push off, you can, lean on in terms of support, that was a challenge. I think having, my family there, having, the Bermuda Rowing Association there, just having, even though they're not on the water with me, just having that support was good. And I also then learned that, don't try to do it yourself. Especially, and I'm learning, I was learning a lot of new things. The help is there, not only in terms of administratively and emotionally and mentally, but physically. There are other people, if you get a bunch of singles together, you have a team and you can push each other, and you can, it would be like going running by yourself and you're insistent upon doing it yourself. Why? just join a pack of runners, and then you'll be like, the amount of productivity that your increase in productivity, your increase in physical, mental, physiological gains is immense. I mean, it's and that took, I was like, okay, I need to be a part of a group. And it's finding that balance between like doing what's right for me and making sure that this situation, whatever is right for me, and being part of a team, and making a team if I have to. And yeah, it was just, I found that finding people who had the similar goals to me made it so much easier. That's why my time in Australia was so productive. And then, especially in the lockdown, I found other scullers who were in similar positions, and it made a world's difference. I mean, I was able to get done 3 times as much in a week than I would by myself. And I couldn't explain, at the time, I couldn't explain it. I'm like, why am I mentally at the same point now after rowing, 24 kilometers in a session versus when I'm by myself, I rowed like 11 kilometers, and I'm like, I'm like the same level of fatigue mentally. And so, yeah, so that was a big adjustment, but I found the solution was just I had to make the situation work for me. And if that meant making a team, going out and saying, hey, come do this thing with me, it'll be beneficial for you too. Then, it was just, it was a lot of getting over my fear of saying, hey, can you help me do this? Can you help me out with something? Getting over my fear, like, oh, I don't want to bother that person. Oh, maybe they don't want to train with me. Like, no, I need them to train with me. So like, I'll be vulnerable. I put myself out there saying, hey, listen, I need your help. But yeah, and I found that, I found that people are very willing to help if you're doing something that's good, and especially if they'll get something out of it too.
Right. Now, was the qualifiers in Brazil due to be taking place on the same area as the Olympics was taking place?
Yeah, so it's the same lake. So it's
Now, that one was a little tricky because at the start end, the wind seemed to swirl around at the beginning. Then you came to a very open space where it kind of, whatever way the wind was blowing, it kind of, gave you a little chop. And then near the end, it kind of smoothed things out. So what are your strengths when it comes to that? Because obviously some people train on a lake, flat, it's all the time. But then when you go to a different place, it's a bit of a challenge because you have the winds coming from different directions, and if you're not used to it, it kind of takes you off because you got to keep the boat as flat as possible as opposed to rocking a lot.
Sure, I think, yeah. So you're spot on. It's the short answer is you have to be prepared for it, and the only way to be prepared for it is to practice in it. So so the Rio course has a number of things with it that are unique about it. One, it's salt water, so that's very different than a lot of the other world rowing courses, like the official World Rowing Championship courses. So it's saltwater. That's, is there a huge change? No, but there's a small change. And when you're talking, this margin of difference over 2,000 meters, that's something is important. But the biggest thing is it can be flat. It can be like, I'm just, trying to imagine like Harrington Sound when it's just, there's no wind and it's just beautiful. So it's like, it can be like that, or it can be, Harrington Sound when there's a lot of, and it's just nasty. And it's like, do you want to be in a boat that's about this wide, trying to do, and be something really graceful and elegant when the water looks like that? Not ideally, but we have to. And so, it's just preparation, and it's putting yourself in that position routinely, and not avoiding, so instead of saying, oh, it's a little windy today, okay, I'll stick inside or something. It's actually saying, well, no, because the scullers who are going to do well are the ones who have practiced that and are ready for any situation. And because it might be flat, at which point, we're all ready for that. It's going to be the ones who it might not be flat, and that will, what I mean? Like you can't hide. Like you can't hide it. Like it'll tell you real quick who prepared and who did not. Everyone will be fit. Everyone will be fit. Everyone will be mentally strong. It'll be the ones who, it has to be my assumption that everyone's going to be ready to go. And so, you don't want to be the one caught with your pants down. So,
right. When you look at, as you're preparing for a team race and you're at the start line, what are you telling yourself just prior to the start? Because all that will change what you tell yourself when you're in the singles. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. So what do I tell myself at the beginning? I don't know. To be honest, I actually don't see it as much difference. So what I'll tell myself or how I'll conduct myself in practice is tends to be very different, because by the time you get to the race, both in a crew boat, so whether it's an 8-man boat and there are 8 other guys with me, or I'm by myself in the single, by the time you get to that point, there's not really a lot you can do to, you can kind of get yourself up to the level that you are at. Like you can, so that you're not cutting yourself short, but you can't, I don't think you can go beyond that. Like I personally don't believe in the game day player, the person who, like how you act in practice is how you're going to be. That's just me personally. And so, but there's no limit. There's theoretically no limit to how you can be in practice. And so how I'll conduct myself in practice, if I'm with a crew, a team with a guy, an 8, is I can be vocal. Not all the time. I'm generally pretty quiet, but I can be vocal. I can say, hey guys, this isn't good enough. Or hey guys, that was great. Try to reinforce positive things. Just how you would try to, motivate a team. But by the time of the race, I'd like to think that I've got such confidence. You can say something before you launch and go out into the water. But when you're sitting on the start line, the only thing I'm worried about is me, because the only thing I can really affect is me. Anything I say to the guys, all the other guys are in their own heads. You know what I mean? They're doing what they have to do to get ready. And I don't see rowing as a rah-rah sport, and we all kind of huddle around and, jump up and down and stuff. There are sports you have to do that because they're very, there's something about them. But rowing, I don't think is that. It's a head game. And so you have to deal with your head. And you have to prepare your head. And so what I tell myself on the start line, of when I was at Cambridge or when I rowed at, under 23s and stuff, is I'm just in my own head saying, am I ready to do what I need to do? You know what I mean? Like, let's get yourself juiced up. Let's first, all you're worried about is that first stroke, and you know how to do it. You're ready to do this. Remind yourself of your training. And every situation, every eventuality, every situation you've prepared for and you know what to do, and in each one. And it's the same thing in a single, except the only thing is I'm the only one pulling the boat. And so, and that's sort of how I've acted, irrespective of being with a huge team or just by myself. Once you're on that start line, the only person you can really affect and have a really positive impact on is yourself. And if that's not the case, if there's someone in that boat who needs you to say, hey, you're going to do well today, you haven't helped them prepare well enough. They're not ready. So that's why in practice, I'm trying to make sure that everyone in the boat is at that point where they're like, the only thing I need to worry about is myself, because I have confidence in everyone else that they're going to do their jobs. Am I going to do my job? Am I going to be the weak link here? And because you can affect that. If I'm worried about, is the guy too ahead of me? Is he going to be the weak link? There's nothing I can do about that when it comes to the start line. So, so I actually haven't found there's much difference sitting on the start line for, apart from when I went to Worlds last year and I was somewhat new to sculling, and I looked over to my left in the heats, and it was the reigning world champion from Norway. That was a mountain to get over in my head, thinking, okay, here's like my idol, and I'm sitting next to him about to line up. I didn't see him after when that green light went. I didn't see him again
until the finish.
No, he was already on the dock by the time I got to the finish.
That's interesting. I know for anyone that does your sport and does it in the UK, one of the most memorable things would be to row down the river with probably thousands of people on the shoreline watching this enormous, what we consider the FA Cup of rowing for you guys. What is it like going down there? Because by the time you get to where majority of the people are, you've been rowing for quite some time, and obviously fatigue is starting to set in. What does that crowd do for you and your team just in those stages?
Yeah, I mean, so the boat race, I boat race Cambridge. People who don't know what it is, it's I always say it's like the Kentucky Derby of rowing. It's the weekend where all of a sudden everyone is like a rowing enthusiast. They don't even like, they think it's like a kayak. Like they're just like, oh, a rowboat. Like they don't know. But that weekend they're like experts. They're like, yes. Everyone has, but it's great because rowing's not like a hugely popular sport. And so having a weekend where it's the heavyweight boxing. It is the pay-per-view event.
Right.
The biggest moment for me in terms of the crowd is there are two. One, well, there are a few, but the biggest two I think that were the shock to me were you're sitting on the start line, and one of the things we had worked on as a crew was don't block out the noise. A lot of people say like, oh, just block out the noise. It's just another rowing race. But that's impossible because it's so loud. Just the murmur of the crowd. It would be like telling, someone in the FA Cup final, oh, don't worry about the crowd. Like
right.
That crowd's going to make you worry about them. Like it's so loud and they're heckling you and like you can't avoid so the important thing was like 5 minutes before the race, before we really kind of zone into what we're doing, just take a look around. Like look around and see the people, take it in, and it's fun. Like that's like one of the experience at it. Like take it in. Like you probably will never experience something like this again, where you are the focal point of this endless arena. And the murmur, it's a murmur of a crowd that, it's just like a football stadium that even if something's going on, there's just people there and it's sound. So that was the first one. I was like, whoa. And there's the helicopters above and there's like a bunch of motorboats behind. They're ready to follow you. That was the first thing. And then the second one is when that flag goes down, the like go flag.
Right.
The roar of the crowd is like, that was just like, I just remember because, it's really frantic at the start, or it looks frantic and it feels alarming. But I just remember like, oh, like, what's this sound? Like, oh gosh, like, but then it's just like, wow, this is so cool.
Right.
Eventually you kind of forget about it and it goes by. Like, it's a long race. It's like, it's anywhere from 16 to 20 minutes long, depending on the day. And before you know it, you're going through the first bridge, and you're like, whoa, like in training, this takes so long to get here and it's so painful. And like, but now I'm like, oh, I'm already here. Like, and you're so zoned into what you're doing and what the other boat is doing. Cause it's a 2-horse race. And so you have very sharp focus and keen focus on both. And then before you know it, you're going through the second bridge. And by then there's only 3 minutes left. And then you're done. And, I've been very fortunate in both my experiences so far. The 2 times I've done it, I crossed the finish line first. And so that was the result of the second one. That was a moment where it was, again, it was actually fewer people towards the finish because of just like people want to watch the race.
Right.
But that's a time where you just enjoy. It's, the first time I won, it was elation. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my, like, wow, this, like, it happened. And then the second year was almost just like relief. It was just like everything worked out, but going through that first like 10 minutes, it's just like 20 people deep on either side for the entire river.
Right.
And that is, it's like you're in the Coliseum. And for a sport like rowing, where there's not really a lot of fanfare apart from other rowers, that was really cool. I remember my first year, there was a flare that went off on the bridge. And like, again, rowing is not this like flare, like this is not like the, like the fans going nuts with flares. Right. And I think it ended up being, I don't know what the source or why it was a flare, but I just remember coming under the bridge and there's this flare smoke, and I'm like, gosh, these people take it really seriously. Like, they are so invested in this
European football.
Yeah. I was like, this is the only time in my life I'm going to be a footballer. Like, this is like, I feel like the big time celebrity. I am like, like Ronaldo or Messi or something.
When you look at how things transpire over a short period of time, and you do have to flip flop. What advice are you getting from the university that is helping you to be able to change that? Because it is challenging at times, as you've already indicated, going from the team to the single to the by yourself moment. Are you getting assistance in advice on just how to manage that aspect of it?
Right. So, yeah. So I think the really nice thing about the rowing world is that it's a small community, but it's a very tightly knit community, and people want to help each other. And without that, I would not be doing what I am today. Not even close. So even when I went, kind of that lone wolf into the woods kind of by myself, I always had, I could talk to old coaches of mine. I could talk to my current coach at Cambridge. And even when I was training in Boston, Massachusetts on the Charles River. I had a great coach there who came with me to Worlds, and I think he just really wanted to help me out. You know what I mean? Like and that is what I found. And if I ever needed something like a support training, but also administratively, like a case to carry my rowing oars to go to the World Championships, I didn't know I needed that. Like, I've never done. This is all new to me. And it was provided, like someone found it, like someone had one. They're like, hey, borrow mine. Like, and there was a lot of that. And I think that to me is what is the best thing about the rowing community around the world. Because like, I think like a lot of sports, but I think particularly with the smaller sports, if you find someone who also does it, you automatically have a connection with them. And so, with, thinking about have people help me? Absolutely. Like, and even when I said, with my university team, when I told them I was coming back this year, I told them, I said, it might not be in the capacity that I'm training full time with you guys, because I'm still going to be in my single. But I would like, I think I would like to train on the land, on, the rowing machine, weights, strength conditioning stuff on land. But I would love that, because I need a team environment, but I might not be able to join you initially in your boats, in your training on the water. And ideally what I would like to do this year is go back, just be in the single for a long time, go to the qualifier, qualify, and then go back to the university and do the boat race again. Mm-hmm. That's like in my perfect world. But with the current COVID situation, you don't know if it's going to happen on time, if it's going to be rescheduled. So there's a chance that, if let's say, the boat race is typically in April or late March, early April. If right now the qualifier is in January, so there's a decent amount of time it would work for me. If they move the qualifier to April, that's it. I can't do the boat race. Right. And I think I told them that, I said, listen, there's a chance I might not be able to contribute to, like help the team out and be like a, what I would consider a real member of the team. That is someone who's going to race for Cambridge. And they said, yeah, okay. Like, we understand, like, that's fair enough. Like, I think, and they know that this is also obviously this Olympic dream is really important to me, and they want to help. And I think that to me is like, there might be a situation where I am not able to race for Cambridge. Irrespective of that, they want to help me. And that to me was like, I was like, God, I love this sport. I love this community. Like I found that throughout the rowing world, everywhere I've gone, people have always been willing to help, and I have gained immensely from that.
Yeah. Have they set a date for the qualifiers for the Americas?
Yeah, they have. So it's the end of January. So January like 30th, or 29th to 30th is the start date. And it's still in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. And they're going to confirm that in October, I believe. They're going to confirm whether that is what the plan is. And I guess they have to see kind of what the situation in the world is, and particularly how Brazil is doing, but also how all the other countries are doing. Because if, let's say, Brazil is doing well, but all the other countries in South America are not, I don't think Brazil wants them all coming over. So, yeah, and so that's the tentative plan right now. So,
and what preparations do you have planned to prepare? Because obviously you had a plan that was working for you leading up to the qualifiers that were postponed this year, but looking at it now, you've got a shorter time to prepare for a January date as you would have been competing or trying to qualify in April of this year.
Yeah, so I think it's a shorter time, obviously definitely from now,
right?
But that's also why I've just been training over the summer, and it was about. Yes, it's very hard, and the situation is not ideal, but everyone has to make adjustments. It really is a sink or swim, and it's like my mentality and my mindset throughout this whole process. Starting in March when it all got canceled, I took a week to feel sorry for myself, and then I thought to myself, right. There's going to be another qualifier. There's going to, when they said we're going to reschedule the Olympics, there's going to be something else. And for everyone is going to have their challenges in terms of how am I going to do the training? How am I going to get the best out of me and do what I need to do training wise? But the reality is that qualifier is going to happen and no one's going to care. They're going to feel really bad for you. If you don't qualify and they say, and you say, oh, but I didn't have access to my boat. They're just going to say, wow, I'm really sorry. See you next time. No one cares. Nobody cares if you don't do it. If you don't make it, and it's really harsh, but it's true. And so you don't have a choice but to do what you can to make sure you're as close to as possible. And so, that's why, I had to find a group that was in Boston at the time to train with, to make sure I was getting my work done. And I was able to do some pretty solid training. So I was able to get in some really good work that now puts me in a position now that I'm okay, am I ideally where I would be if everything was perfect? No. If anything, I would have hoped to have gone to the Olympics by now, and I'd be kind of popping a beer and enjoying myself. But that's not it. And that's just the reality. And it's making sure that I can come away from each week, each day, each whatever month and say, have I done everything that I could best prepare me, irrespective of what challenges there are, because no one cares. Really, if it's just going to say, I'm sorry, that sucks. That really sucks. Have a nice day. There's the door. I'm praying for you. But there's the door. And it's just, yeah, they're right. And so now the plan is just to continue where I'm at now. It's now obviously going back to Cambridge, there'll be a little bit more of a structure and just to really ramp it up for these next few months before pulling it back a bit to taper. But luckily I'm in a position now that I can I'm fitness wise. I mean, I'm happy where I'm at considering the circumstances.
Right, right. Well, I want to wish you all the best
Thank you.
as you get ready to head back to the UK to start that long journey of trying to accomplish your goal and a goal for Bermuda of racing at the Olympics in Tokyo come next year. So all the best. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah, for
Obviously,
sure. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
try to keep Bermuda in touch with what's going on with you, and
For sure.
hopefully come January, your goal is met to get to the next phase.
Yeah,
So,
well, the goal that will be the first step. The
yes,
goal, the real goal, is down the line. But the first hurdle, there's no goal without getting this first hurdle done. So
that's true. That's true. But hopefully, it does come off, because in order to get to the finish line, you have to start. So
that's right.
let's hope that January is the start and the end goal is met come Tokyo.
Yeah, and I guess I would just say that I hope. Obviously, before me was Shelley, and she really, I think, set the path for kind of the modern era for rowing. And then before Shelley, there was Jim Butterfield, and I think if hopefully I can contribute to that. I think hopefully I can give my service of that, and then if that can inspire future Bermudians to kind of pick up the baton and carry it on, then it'd mean the world. Put Bermuda on the map of rowing. So
all right. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Okay.
awesome. Thank you so much.
All righty.